Hey everyone, welcome back to Cooking with Calvin. Today we are going to continue our journey on our yeast breads. We're going to be working on croissants today. So this ties in the basic components that we've been working on with yeast already, but the extra special thing about croissants is the thousands of layers that you see in one croissant you actually make yourself. So a lot of it is going to be just manual labor, getting the layers into the croissants and getting those butters in those layers. So making croissants, pretty simple. Main components are butter, milk. I'm using honey in this instance, but you need some kind of sweetener so you could feed the yeast. You need the actual yeast, and then your dry ingredients, you need flour and you need salt. So what we have mixed here, I have 3 cups of bread flour, mixed with 1 tablespoon of salt. Now you want to change that amount of salt if you're using salted butter. I'm using unsalted, so I know the exact amount of salt that I have in my recipe, but if you're using salted butter, just cut down on the amount of salt you have in the flour. So we have heated up our milk to lukewarm. It's a good environment for the yeast to start blooming in. So while we have that, we're gonna get all of our yeast. Now that's 1 packet of yeast, dry active. It's 1 cup of milk. And then this is going to be just a good couple tablespoons of honey. What we want to do is just sort of get everything incorporated in here. And you'll smell it instantly. The yeast will want to eat the sugars. And so you kind of get it mixed into there, and then we're just going to leave it all so that it can fully blossom together. While we leave that for a couple minutes, we want to, just like we always do, incorporate as much air with a whisk into the dry mixture as we can. Make it easier for mixing later on. Get those air pockets going already. Once we have that nice. So, butter. Butter we want to take out a couple hours beforehand. We want it to be room temperature so that we could start manipulating it without it melting. You don't want melted unless you have something that can you pour the butter into and then refrigerate it. But you need something that'll make it hold its shape, because basically we're going to roll out croissant dough, and then the butter is going to be maybe 2/3 the size of the croissant dough, all pressed out. So we put it, layer plastic wrap on top, layer plastic wrap on bottom, nice and room temperature. And then we want to start manipulating this into the shape we want it to be. It shouldn't take too much. You can also just take your hand and manipulate it. We have it the rough shape that we wanted. We can always manipulate this later a little bit more, but the important part is before we start doing the dough, let's get this into the fridge. We want this nice cooled down at least half an hour before we pull it out. So we're gonna get it into there. Now we come back to this. It looks like yeast has fully bloomed. It's nice foam on top. So we are going to pour with one hand and mix with the other. If you have a mixer, you can get that right in with the dough hook attachment. Get everything incorporated. We're going to come in Do the rest of the mixing with the rubber spatula. The same thing for this dough. We're gonna get it into the fridge as soon as possible. Once it's rolled out. The biggest thing for croissants is controlling the temperature. You don't want it to be too hot because you don't want the butter to melt into the dough because then you won't get those layers that croissant is really known for. Once you have it to about here, let's just sort of get our hand into there and start pressing everything together. And you could start kneading it at this point. I want to make sure that I get all of the dry components from the actual bowl. So I'm pressing the dough to get that little extra bit of salt and flour. Right. Got everything there. Let's put it onto this surface. You might need a little bit of extra flour. You're going to want to make sure you don't want it to stick to the table. You're going to have to roll it out and then transfer it to a sheet pan and get it into the fridge. All right, get your pan nice and greased up. I'm gonna do the same thing done before. Start at the middle, go out. It's gonna wanna go oval shaped. Well, what we wanna do is manipulate it to be a rectangle. You're pushing in the sides as you need. I'm gonna get it as thin as possible. Okay. Now that we have it here, there's going to be more opportunities to roll it out. So what we're going to do is we're going to pop this into the fridge for half an hour. If you want, kind of manipulate it a little bit easier by pressing it into the pan. Let's get this cooling down. All right, so we're taking our butter out. Being careful we don't get any plastic wrap mixed into it. The less you could actually touch it, the better off you'll be, because you don't want to transfer that body heat to the butter. So now we go about creating those layers. So we want to take it kind of like an envelope fold, get that on it, press it in, and we pull this side over, pressing everything in. And then take it and turn it, and fold it the same way. This way, you can see some butter peeking out the edge on one side. This helps eliminate that, keep all that butter in. So we're gonna do this about 3 times. We're going to have to throw it back into the fridge at some point, just to keep everything cool. So, have it just like that. Let's roll it out. You're not gonna roll it out as big as before. We got some butter peeking through now. So we're gonna do, fold it again. Every time you fold it, you're creating a layer. So I can feel the butter melting a little bit. So what I'm gonna do is throw this back into the fridge, get some more chill onto it. And that's nice and cooled down. I'm going to continue rolling it out. Now is a good time to really shape it into that rectangle shape. Remember, we're just trying to work fast right now so we could beat the butter from melting. And we basically have it out. Let's do that fold one more time. Put it just about 2/3 of the way down. Let's fold up the other end. Press all of those edges in so you could try to make sure that the butter stays inside. Now we're going to take this, we're going to wrap it up, and now this is going to go into the fridge overnight. We got to make sure everything settles. So wrap it up, throw it in the fridge overnight, come back to it in the morning. Just perfect, start rolling out, so just fresh for breakfast. Okay, here we are next morning. We let it chill overnight, so everything should be able to be spread out a little bit more. So now we want to do one final roll out, tuck. Be a little bit more difficult just because the butter is so cold now. Now we can keep it going in that rectangle shape. All right, everything's spread out nicely. Got one more tuck. Now we want to do, let's come along and just trim these edges up. And then, I'll come up close. And then we're going to divide it right in half. Half one more time. Now we can start forming some. So, what I'm going to do, get 3 off to the side. Flour this down a little bit more. And now, since we're going to start actually forming them, we want them to be as thin as possible. Keep rolling it out. All right. So now what we can do is we can just kind of roll it like this. These are going to make really, really big croissants. But you can also, by doing it this way, we can put some sort of stuffing onto the inside. There we go. We can make them all like that. What we're going to do is we're going to throw them into the oven 400 degrees for the first 8 minutes. After 8 minutes, bring it down to 375, and it should be another 6 to 8 minutes, depending on the size of your croissants. You can stuff them before you put them in. You can have toppings for when they come out. Either way. So let's pop these into the oven and see what we get out. All right, here we have it out of the oven. Now this is the most exciting part. Now you get to break it open. you get to see all those layers that you created all on the inside. It'd be nice, light, fluffy, a little bit of sweetness to it. If you want a little bit of extra shine on the top, you can put an egg wash right on top right before you throw it into the oven. But other than that, I mean, put a side of jam and a side of butter and you're good to go for breakfast. And until next time.